Hello there. It's your girl Valerie Mason Chase again. And I'm looking at myself, and it looks like there's a little delay between when I say words and when my mouth moves. But anyhow, I don't know what the issue is. But welcome to another episode of Marriage Beyond the Breach. And listen, I'm just going to tell y'all right now, this is going to be a powerful episode tonight. We are already preparing for a part two because there's so much to unpack, so much content. I really don't anticipate that we're going to get to all of it on tonight. So we're planning to have a part two on next Sunday. So those of you who are out there now, I pray that you will be with us again on next week. And before I forget, first of all, let me thank you, anyone who was watching live or later. If you haven't already done so, I would encourage you and I would appreciate if you would subscribe to the YouTube channel and like and share and all that good stuff. Hey, sis, how you doing? So I'm going to bring our guests right on. And just FYI, ordinarily, when I bring on a guest, I will have them talk about themselves and share whatever they want to with the listening audience. But there's so much to cover tonight. What I've done is the bio for each guest is underneath the description on the YouTube page. So if you're watching on YouTube, look at the description, and beneath it is the bio of each individual. So listen, what we're talking about tonight, the title is Sacred and Secular. How we navigate Christianity with modern counseling practices. And I know that's a heavy subject. So let me bring on everybody tonight. First, I'm going to bring on Brother Alvin Smith. Hey, Alvin.
Hey, what's going on? What's going on? How you doing this evening?
Everybody give a shout out to Brother Alvin. We have Dr. Angel Wyndham. Hey, Dr. Angel.
Hi, Valerie.
Thank you for being here. And none other than the illustrious Dr. Danita Thompson. Hey, Dr. Danita.
Good evening, everyone. Hey, Alvin, Dr. Angel. Good to see you tonight.
So, listen, we have got a powerful episode for tonight, and we've got some powerhouses here to address this subject of counseling and Christianity. And let me just say right off the bat, we are all of us believers, we're all Christians, and we are all counselors. So I think it is a foregone conclusion that we are in favor of counseling and Christianity, but we also have an understanding that not everybody feels the same way as we do, and some are very cautious. Some Christians are very cautious in how they approach Christianity, and maybe have even heard something negative said about pursuing counseling as a Christian. So we're going to get right into it. I don't know why I have this delay. I don't know. I would go out and come back in, but that's just going to mess everything up. So we're going to dive right into it. So what are, from your perspective, some common misconceptions that Christians may have about seeking therapy? And anybody can answer that.
Yeah.
Not all at once.
Ladies first.
Well, I think that Christians sometimes feel that it is a lack of faith to seek out counseling, or that God is not in favor of them seeking any kind of assistance outside of Him.
A lot of Christians may feel that, if they go see a therapist, they're weak, just piggybacking a little bit off of Dr. Danita, that their faith is weak, that their confidence in God and the power that they have in Him to heal, deliver, set free is is not there. It's weak. And then also there are some Christians that believe if you go to see a therapist, a counselor, then you're crazy. There's the stigma that, you know, something's wrong with you, that you're going to see a shrink, you know, you're going to see a head doctor, you know, what's wrong with you. And, you know, just along those lines of, you need to be able to, you know, come to God with everything and leave it there with him. And he'll help you to overcome without you even needing any other assistance.
Yeah. Yeah. Alvin, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Yes. It is a trust thing. And you know, for most Christians that I've already encountered, especially if you belong to the same church, and how they see themselves. And so what their thing is that you're not going to view them as this higher standard anymore, because of the fact, like now you're viewing them as, well, maybe something is wrong with you, and you know, so how can you help me? You're preaching this gospel, you know, and it makes things kind of difficult. I was looking up something, and Brene Brown said, you know, it's one of them things where they isolate themselves from seeking the help that they might need, and then they get stuck. They get stuck within themselves as to not seeking the help that's going to better them, so they can be healthy and whole to be able to help you as a parishioner. So,
I think also historically the church was the one-stop shop. So you went to the church for everything, and to think of going outside of the church for any kind of help, you know, historically just didn't happen that way. But then also, if you think historically, there are some validity to the skepticism from, you know, the historical Freud and his association with Christianity, believing that it was hysteria and neurosis. And so, you know, you have people that's very valid for people who don't have the education about what counseling is today, may still know from their studies back in the day when they had that one psychology class and learned about Freud, you know, and what he thought about Christians in coming to counseling. And was it at one point, was that like a diagnosis of, I don't really know. I might be mistaken, but I feel like there was something with Christianity and there being diagnosis of neurosis and hysteria.
It could have been a religious preoccupation. It could have been something.
Yeah, because when you think about, we as Christians sometimes, and especially in the language that we use, God said, God told me, I heard God say. Outside of the Christian community, someone might think that the person is schizophrenic.
Yeah.
And they're hearing voices. It's important to be able to differentiate that, that connection that we have with God, where he does speak to us in a variety of ways, and to differentiate that from a mental illness where one is actually hearing voices.
Yeah.
I want to address Frank Wyndham, Dr. Angel's man. He put in Proverbs 12:15, and that says, "The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he that hearkeneth unto counsel is wise."
Amen.
So that's good. That's good, Brother Frank. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. And those of you who are listening, watching, whatever, what's been your experience, especially if you are a Christian, what's been your experience with with counseling. How have you navigated that, if you have at all? What have you heard in times past versus what you are hearing now, especially what comes across that pulpit? So I wonder if each of you can share from your perspective, how can Christianity and modern counseling practices really coexist? How can the two coexist?
I mean, I believe the two can coexist because, like your t-shirt says, Jesus, you can have Jesus and you can have therapy. My husband brought up a scripture. I had another scripture myself, Proverbs chapter 11, 14 to 15, that says, where no counselors, the people fail. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety.
There's
So
safety.
when
Right.
you're seeking therapy, this is a way for you to actually be in line with faith. They can coexist, for you to go to therapy, for you to have a therapist, and for you to have Jesus. It can coexist. You can have both. God created therapists just like God created the postman, the medical doctor,
Right.
I don't know, the lawyer. God created also therapists. We
Yeah.
are also a
Yeah,
part of
absolutely.
his creation, you know.
Yeah, and Proverbs, the Proverbs are full of good scriptures that validate not just that we should, or not just that we could, that it could coexist, but from my perspective, it should coexist.
Right.
In Proverbs 15 and 22, without consultation, the plans are frustrated, but with many counselors, they succeed. Counseling integrated with clinical counseling, integrated with faith, can help strengthen a person's faith, can help them to identify those areas that are keeping them from growing, in God. And so without that counsel, they can remain very stagnant in their walk. So I would say that it not only can it coexist, but it should.
It should coexist. Yeah. And it's interesting. So, within the Christian community, very often, especially in times past, when we thought about healing,
Right.
we didn't include healing for our mind, our emotions, all of that. We didn't think about healing for that. We limited it to just our physical body, not taking into account that, at least from my perspective, I believe God cares about all of who we are, every part of us, which includes our mental health, our emotional well-being, and all of that. And I just want to read something
Well,
that my sister can't. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alvin.
no, go ahead. Finish your thought. Finish your thought.
No, go ahead. I was going to read a comment, but you go ahead.
I was just going to quote something that Paul said, Philippians 4, was that 4:25, when he says, think on these things, whatever things is good, whatever things is noble, whatever things is true. He said, think on these things. And then Paul also talks about, renewing the mind. See, because counseling is about behavior change. It's about changing behaviors. And I'm always telling clients, it's not about changing you as a person. We're changing the behaviors, the negative behaviors. So within that, I believe that the change of healing comes from the mind, from the mind down, because the mind is the central focal point of our being. And if we correct that, we correct the of how we're acting, interacting with other people, how we feel about ourselves. Because God says, behold, I created you a good person. I created you to be good. I created you wonderful. And so, it's within that content that, it can coexist between, what we're talking about, Christianity and DBT and CBT, because all of it is about behavior change. And as we go into it,
Absolutely.
we'll start looking at the Bible, and we're looking at your condition, because you'll see all throughout the Bible mental health. You see a lot of preachers now are starting to see that, and they're talking about it, because those are some of the conditions that was happening in biblical times, and it's happening now.
Right.
And so, within that, we'll be able to help each other.
And I know that's one of the things that I really love about CBT, and I gravitated towards CBT very early, even as an intern, because to me, listen, CBT is straight biblical, because it lines up with biblical principles, just that scripture you just quoted, Alvin, about renewing your mind. CBT and DBT, from my perspective, completely line up with that. And a client does not have to be a believer at all to practice that, or to practice any biblical principle. The principle works regardless.
Yeah.
The principle works, and we don't have to say where we got the principle from. We just got to put it into practice, because it works. So my sister friend Candy, she wrote that, she said, yes, my pastor stated that he was trying to get a permit to carry, I'm assuming for a weapon, a gun, and someone told him, when he was asked the question, such as, do you hear voices, or etc., not to answer truthfully, because a Christian would say that they talk to God and God talks to us. That's a great point, Candy, because I can absolutely see that happening. They might say, oh, well, he hears voices, so he's disqualified as someone who can be allowed a carry permit, because they may see it as a mental illness. So like I said earlier, I think the language we use and the words we use and the spaces in which we use them, I think it matters. What do you guys think about that?
It does.
It does. I mean, with that example, there are many people who have taken their weapons and killed people in the name of God.
Yes.
Because God told them. They heard God say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how do you get that across as a Christian to someone in the secular community who sits in a space to make a decision, yay or nay, to something that you're trying to do? Like this pastor, he's trying to get a carry permit. But if they say, if you hear voices, or you essentially can't say that you talk to God and God talks to you.
Well, that when they're asking about that, that's not what they're asking about. They're asking about hallucinations. They're asking about auditory, visual hallucinations and things like that. And we as believers talking or hearing from God, no, we don't have a hallucination. It's not. We're not under any delusion or anything. So the pastor would say no to that.
Yeah, that's a good point, because they're not looking at hearing as we are thinking of hearing.
Right.
They're looking at it from a mental illness perspective. And if you're hearing voices like that, I get it. Because sometimes we do hear voice. Listen, there have been at least 2 occasions in my life where I audibly heard God say, and one time it saved my life because I was driving a car and I wasn't paying attention. And he said, Valerie, I heard his voice. Valerie, look up. And I looked up, I was about to run a red light and somebody was crossing the street.
Wow.
And I was able to stop. I know that was the voice of God. Because the enemy want me to look up. He's going to want me to keep looking down and hit somebody. And I heard it as clear as I am hearing your voice right now this evening. So, yeah. That's stuff that we do experience. It's real.
Yeah.
I want to put up what Natalie said also. Natalie said that when her mother passed, she said she told her father that she wanted counseling. He told her to just take it to Jesus. She said it was ingrained in me way before then not to use therapists. Shaking my head.
But those are some of the myths that we all have.
Yeah.
Take it to Jesus. Take it to the altar in prayer. Leave it there.
Yes. You know, that's what they had that all night service.
Yes. Shut it.
We gonna stay here till you get a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Which is nothing wrong with that, because obviously we need to take things to the altar. We do need breakthroughs, but after that, we also need to know how to live differently than whatever we got free from or delivered from, or whatever the breakthrough was. We had a lifestyle prior to that wasn't healthy. So now what do we do? Once we left it at the altar, what do we do now to live differently with our freedom?
That's a great point, because we cannot live on our knees. At some point, we've got to get up and actually live this life that God has blessed us with. We have to interact with our family. We've got to go to work. We've got to deal with colleagues and neighbors and people out in the street. How do we now do that? That is a great point. Yeah.
Because the other part of that is teaching.
That's why. I'm sorry. What you say, Alvin?
I was just getting ready to say, because the other part of that, even though you're on your knees, it's like teaching them to leave it there. Because most times, when you get up, you're taking stuff back with you. Because you don't have the tools to get rid of it. You have no idea what you're fighting. You know? Right.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So Nisi said that's why it took me so long to finally get therapy. So I'm assuming you mean, Nini, it took you so long because of the teachings that you had earlier on in your life. So let me ask you guys this. And for anyone who might just be joining us, we're talking about how to reconcile Christianity with modern counseling practices and what that can look like. So how do you address issues where a client's interpretation of their faith might conflict with mental health recommendations?
A client's conflict with their faith might...
No, their interpretation of their faith.
Okay.
How they live out their faith and what they believe be in conflict with what we may recommend as a mental health professional.
Okay. So I want to say, even if it's not a conflict as far as what we recommend, sometimes clients, they're going to give you some pushback. There may be some resistance as to, I recommend this, or, do you think this week you can try this for homework? And then they come back and they say, I never did that because I don't agree with that. We have to always find out with our clients what works for them. What's not going to be in conflict that you think that you can try, that it can work with, for you, because we want to do what we can to help, but not recommend, okay, you're coming in, you have anxiety about going somewhere, and I'm going to tell you to go to that place tomorrow. No, if that's not going to work for you, then we may have to slowly discuss why is it going to this place, give you so much anxiety, and let's get to the root of what's going on. So whatever recommendations that they may be in conflict with, why? We would talk about, why is this something that you're resistant to doing, and how is this, not aligning with you, so we can figure out what does.
Yeah.
I think also it's important to help clients process through their faith. And what is it about what we are sharing to do that makes them feel that this is something God wouldn't, be pleased with? And what scriptures are they, using to, as the support for they shouldn't, do this. The one thing that comes to mind, because you didn't necessarily give an example, but the one thing that comes to mind that we do regularly recommend in counseling is breath work and meditation.
Right.
And clients often, Christian clients often get that confused with, we're telling them to engage in Eastern practices. And so offering some education around that helps. That all of this originated with God. He's the one that told us to meditate on the word. All of the things, the breathing and all of that is a medical thing. It's physical. So that just because the Easterners put a title to it, yoga and whatever else they put to it, it didn't mean that it originated with them.
Right.
And so offering some education to help people see that that the way in which they may be interpreting scripture, or it's just stories that they've heard down through the years that they never even tried to find out for themselves whether this is actually biblical or not,
Yeah. That's very true. And I have experienced that where clients give pushback, especially when you start talking about mindfulness practices and that sort of thing. They do give some pushback. However, as you said, Dr. Danita, some psychoeducation can go a long way. They go a very long way. And there was a book that you recommended, Dr. Angel, that I have actually been using with a lot of my clients. This book entitled Breath as Prayer. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes. I love that book. I have it too.
As Prayer. Calm your anxiety, focus your mind, and renew your soul. So I love this little book, and I want to thank you for recommending that, because as soon as you said it, I was right on Amazon, and there's some great.
I love that book, and I use it personally as well.
Right. Yes.
I think some of the other treatments, that we use, even culturally, for Christians who are African American, sometimes the treatments seem a little, because they just don't understand it, like EMDR or tapping. And, it feels like, what are we, calling up the, conjuring up something, or, or with EMDR, they may feel like it's, hypnosis, and that we're going to, So really providing that psychoeducation is key. And also establishing a good relationship so that they trust you. And that they know that you wouldn't, especially when you are, professing. It takes a minute, because, everybody that calls and that says they're a Christian doesn't necessarily, the term Christianity is very broad. So the client, the client does have to, be trusting that you're not taking them to places that are, beyond their belief system. And that, and then that the part there is how much we are willing to disclose, because we learned in school that, you don't disclose, your personal information. But I have found that clients who come for Christian counseling, they really want to know that you are a good, firm believer. So you do have to disclose some.
I agree. Yeah. I also at Cairn University, where I received my master's degree in counseling. Absolutely, that was forbidden. Not disclosure, self-disclosure. That's a cuss word. You don't do that. You just don't do it. And I wasn't so sure about it then, and I'm definitely not sure about it now, because I can say that I do disclose some things with some clients, depending upon what the situation is. I absolutely do. And I think that especially within our community, not just the Christian community, but people of color,
Right.
they want to know, listen, if I'm coming to you and I'm talking about relationship issues, do you have a relationship? Have you ever been in a relationship? What you know about it beyond the books? Because some people want not just the theoretical, but they also want something practical.
They want to know you have a lived experience.
Yes, a lived experience. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you can't let them know about your lived experience without disclosing something on some level.
Right.
So how do you guys feel about disclosing, Alvin and Dr. Angel?
Well, for me, it's I take that personal. Me working inside of a prison with the youth, it was one thing that they told me as a social worker. They was like, well, Mr. Smith, like, you want to know all this stuff about us, but we don't know anything about you. So me coming into this practice, I took a lot of that with me because of the fact, hey, I cannot be scared to share a little bit about myself. In order to build rapport, I take time to build rapport within that first 10 minutes. And I tell them a little bit my history, and we go from there. And it relaxes them because now they can sit back at ease because they know that I'm not coming after, to disrupt them or anything. They know I'm there to help. Because once they hear parts of it. But it is a fine line that you have to
absolutely cross. We're not going in there to be sister girlfriends.
Exactly.
Right.
Bro, we're not doing that.
You have to be careful.
I believe that self-disclosure definitely can be a tool used in therapy. There is a fine line, like Alvin is saying, and I have used self-disclosure, and I do sometimes even see a client out and about, and I say to clients often that I'm going to give you a nod. I'm not going to just ignore you, but that's about it. And if you want to, say I'm your therapist or you want to do all this stuff, you can. But I'm just going to give you a nod, because I have a lot of younger people too. So, they'll be like, that's my therapist. I'm like, calm down. Yes, I'll just give you a nod and, we'll keep it there. But self-disclosure, I do use very rarely, Valerie, but I do believe it can be a tool. I do believe it is good for rapport building, as Alvin said too. But I don't know that I definitely depend on that. I have some controversy between the lived experience and can I still help you even if I have not done everything or lived everything that you have lived. And I do believe that we can be helped by someone even if they didn't live the same experience we lived. Does that make sense? Sometimes I've had maybe a client that's much older than me, and I may not have lived all of the life that they've lived, but I have been able to, help them to continue on. It's an honor to be able to do that. But so.
Yeah, I agree, Dr. Angel. I think there are categories of areas in which it's easier to use your book knowledge and acceptable. I think when it comes to marriage and relationships, and that it's a little bit more challenging for you not to have some lived experience. Of course, there's book knowledge in how to develop communication and how to resolve conflict, things like that. But there's something about having lived it when you talk
having
about
walked it out, having
walked it out. When you talk
been
about
able to
relationships,
practice what you preach, right?
yeah,
That 40-year journey.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I think also a lot of the self-disclosure is personality, depending on your personality, there is a level of, for some, more comfort than others. Then also the role that you have now as a pastor, there were people that showed up, at our church that were also clients. And I couldn't make, I couldn't say, oh, well, you got to leave now, because I'm
Right.
because I'm your counselor. And there are many times we were very open with our congregation. So there were many times that people would hear, things that I may not necessarily have said in session, but there was self-disclosure over the pulpit. So,
Yes.
people would hear. And now that, counselors have these podcasts, while people are not necessarily allowed to friend request us individually, but they're following us on the podcast. And there are a lot of counselors who share their personal stories. Kiara has her TikTok and she shares a lot of personal testimony. So I don't know where the field will be going as it relates to social media and in that regard, but everybody's life, who are now influencers, it's an open book.
Yeah, that's very true. Because I know Frank and I have shared a lot about our marital struggles here on Marriage Beyond the Breach. And I know some of my clients see it because they talk to me. They come back and say something about it. So, yeah. Is that some? See, I don't know about how do you get around that? I don't think there's any way to get around that because social
In
media
this day and age,
Right. It's hard. And
it's
even
just so public.
right. If you're in church, you have a lot. Well, for me, I have a lot of clients that goes to the church. And and like you said, Dr. Angel, I go up there, I give them a fist bump and keep it pushing, because it's none of my business. Yes, I'm sorry, I do that. But I just keep it moving.
Right.
When I was at this other church, I was in leadership positions and I was dealing with other leadership. And when they came, they so happened to come. And I had some that said, hey, would it be okay? It's not a problem. It's not a problem. We'll reassign you to somebody else, because it is. It can be challenging. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's challenging for the client as well because I can remember specifically there was a client that I had been assigned to who was also a member of the church that I attend, but I didn't know this person. I didn't know them, but apparently they knew me. And they said, I think, Dr. Nita, I don't know if you remember, they said that they wanted a different counselor because they knew me. And I looked at the name. I said, I have no idea who this person is. I'm okay with that. I just want people to get help, regardless of who they sit across from throughout the process. So I think for clients, it can be challenging as well for them to know how to navigate outside of that counseling space if you have other interactions outside of that. And I think it's important, like you, Dr. Angel, to let them know up front, because I do the same thing with my clients. I let them know if I see you out in public somewhere, it's not that I am ignoring you, but I have to honor that confidentiality. Now, if you walk up to me and say, "Hey, Valerie," of course, I'm not gonna just turn my back and like I don't. But there's a limit in terms of what I can do. I had a client that I had worked with for some time, and I went to church to support her. I had that whole conversation with her. And she came running to me. I said, "Oh, everybody, this is Valerie. This is my counselor." And
Right.
it wasn't
Yeah.
on me. I
Right.
didn't divulge anything, but
Yeah.
Right.
but she said it. So yeah, and I think it depends on how comfortable clients are with having that. I don't know if that's not necessarily a dual relationship. Would it be, Dr. Danita? Would that be considered a dual relationship?
It's not a dual relationship if you just attend the same church, but if you have a responsibility over that person, then technically it's a dual relationship. However, when you go into more remote areas of the country, those relationships are permitted because there's no other counselor available in the town.
Yeah.
So we go to church with you, we go to the same doctor, we shop in the same one Piggly Wiggly. So
Wiggly. Straight down south.
I like Piggly Wiggly.
Yeah.
But anyway,
That would be different with the dual relationship. I did have a counselor. I had a client once who was a what do you call it? A graphic artist. And I waited until a certain amount of time after she was no longer my client to have her work on my website. Because once I found out she was a graphic artist, when she was my client, I said to myself, "Oh boy, I can't wait." Because when she's no longer my client and I've waited a certain amount of time, I'm going to ask her about working on the website. So I did, but I didn't do it while she was still my client.
Yeah.
We do have to be careful about those. Can definitely be considered a dual relationship.
For sure.
So Candy said something.
I struggle with that too.
She said, I think it's not necessary to have life experience in everything because that's not realistic, but to have some experience does help in a client trusting that they're,
absolutely, Candy.
Yeah. Have experienced everything that our clients present with.
Yes.
That's not possible. Yeah. Otherwise, we'd be a hot.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I feel like I've been through so many things that I have told the Lord many times, I promise you that if I read the book, I'm going to represent well. Just don't take me through another thing. I can read it in the book.
Yeah.
I concur.
I agree with that 100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're talking about a client's faith. So how can you as a therapist make sure that you respect a client's their faith without imposing your own beliefs? All right, now talk about it.
Well, you know that we learn in school the know thyself, and make sure that we are constantly, aware of our own biases and what's our personal beliefs that need not to be imposed upon. It's just a constant reflection and reminding ourselves of what our own personal biases are, and absolutely never thinking that we don't have personal biases. And making sure that we do that self-talk, self-reflection.
I think for me, it's still in that building rapport phase that I try my best to learn the client and to learn what they value and to learn, where they come from and everything. And, what have they tried? What hasn't worked? What haven't they tried? And I just try to make sure to check in, and so that I am not imposing anything on them, but I try to make sure to check in and ask questions. How does this sound to you? Would this be something you think you would be interested in? I just listen and hear things that they say, this is, something I want to try, or this is something I want to do. I like to use, I think I've talked about this before, that miracle question.
Yeah.
To wake up then tomorrow and things were different, a miracle had occurred. what would that miracle look like? Who would be there?
Right.
You know, how would you know that that miracle occurred? And can you talk to me about that? And just tapping in and hearing what they have to say, then I know that I'm not going to impose. I'm going to go back to what they've said, not what I'm thinking, you know, because we do, like Dr. Danita said, we do have to be self-aware of what we're thinking and just kind of push that to the side in the session and hear what the client is thinking.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's good.
It's not that easy though, in reality, because when we're talking Christian clients, right? Of faith.
Yeah.
So when people come to us and we're people of faith and they're people of faith, and it's very, you can very like unaware, subconscious, not really consciously, you know, start to say things in our vernacular, in our Christian, you know,
Christianese.
in our Christianese, and we could assume, and that goes back to Dr. Angel, really getting to know your client and where they are in their faith, what they really do believe about their faith. Because we can assume because they go to this church or because they are professing Christianity, we could very easily just roll into that thought processing that they think the way we think.
Right. Yeah, because as you said at the very beginning, Christianity is very, 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 very broad.
Yeah.
And all Christians are not created equal. You know, it depends on denomination. It depends on the church that you attend. It depends on even the particular biblical translation that you're using. It depends on all of that.
Yeah.
Right. But the spiritual awakening, we got to be careful. We just have to go by the code of ethics. If we utilize that, our boundaries are set. And, you know, and then, you know, again, understanding your client, as everybody is saying, understanding them. And, you know, they don't want to be browbeat. They don't want to be hit over the head with the Bible. And everybody's not a Christian. They might have a different faith than us. So we had to attempt to be able to like understand where they're coming from, allow them to tell us about their faith, where they like they're y'all saying, understand where they're coming from, what faith do you believe, what do you believe, and if we understand that, now we can use what they give us. But we have to be able to listen. We got to listen to ears on. We got to be able to hear our clients, and then, you know, for me, I just think that God is he's just going to give us. He give me the understanding, the words that I need to say to that particular person, because as everybody's not the same, and everybody's faith is going to be different. It's going to look different.
Yeah, that's a great point, because we have to meet them where they are and not where we would like for them to be or expect them to be where we are.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's something I want you all to think about. Let's think about when you ascertain that a client's, or you strongly suspect that a client's issues are more spiritual in nature as opposed to psychological or emotional. And does deliverance play a part at all? Should it play a part at all? And if so, what might that look like?
I'll start. I don't mind. I've had to pray with clients to be delivered from certain things in a therapy session before. And it does depend on your client, getting to know your client, where they're at. And you do need, I feel, to ask permission, you know, to do that with the client. There have been times where I also have had somebody from that client's spiritual background be there and say, you know, we will have this plan it out and everything, because some people are really dealing with a spiritual battle, and they do need that to happen even within the counseling session, the prayer and everything, so that they can start to walk out their deliverance. As Dr. Danita said earlier, it's all connected. It is all connected. Your spirit, spirit, soul, and body all connected.
Right.
And with that being said, these things can impact your mental health when you are fighting a spiritual battle.
Yeah.
You know? And so if a client is open to having deliverance, then I'm all for it to pray with them and to cover them, you know. And I just say we need to get also somebody from their church or whatever have you that can help them after that whole period has happened to continue to walk in that deliverance. Just like Alvin was saying earlier about, you know, coming to the altar, leaving it there, but you have to have somebody walk with you.
Right.
Walk those things out with you after you've left the stuff, so you don't pick it right back up.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It's important for us not to go into our sessions casually. And I shared this Wednesday at our clinical meeting, that we go into our sessions very prayerful. This is the blessing that clients have coming to a place where people know God. And so we shouldn't ever treat their issues casually. We should really know and hear from God what we're dealing with. What, you know, what is the level of bondage that we are, you know, engaging in with, you know, with this particular client, and not just, you know, not just treat it as some things can be treated strictly as, you know, clinical, but when we have tried all of the clinical treatments, you know, that typically go along with anxiety or depression or trauma, or when we've tried and we know for sure that this client is actually doing the work, because there are a lot of times that we, you know, we go through lots of clinical treatment, but the client's not doing the work.
Right.
But we know that this client is sincerely trying to do the work and wants to overcome, but it's still got a grip on them. That is an indication that it is more of, we say spiritual, but in my opinion, everything is spiritual. Anything that is not of God, anything that is, all of the issues that people come to us with are spiritual. But when you say spiritual, you mean of demonic influence. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. And so I think that once we have attempted the clinical treatment and this thing still has a grip on this person, and they cannot seem to let it go or move past it, or you know, be free from it, then it is demonic in nature.
So how would you handle that differently? Let's say it's a client who is either not a Christian or a Christian who does not believe in deliverance.
One that's not Christian?
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we've detected that Valerie is saying that we've detected, the Holy Spirit has revealed to us that this person is dealing with some demonic influence, but they're not a believer.
Right. Or they are a believer and they say, oh, I don't believe in all that stuff. How might you handle that?
I do want to say, believer or not, when you are dealing with something demonic, that, you know, spiritual, then you need to remove yourself from certain people, places, and things. That's just like I'm sure Alvin can tell us with addiction, people, places, and things. And so if they don't want to acknowledge, it's okay. But can we talk about the people you are around? Can we talk about the places that you've been going? Can we talk about, the things that you've been engaged in, or the things that the people around you are engaged in? And can we talk about influences that may be happening, around you, or, how you may be impacted, or how you may be affected by the company that you keep? Because it's not gonna ever be that, this is a spiritual battle, and there's not some stuff that you need to abstain from in order for you to get the victory in that area. But you don't have to say it like that if they don't want to hear it like that. But can we identify some of the things that could be going on in your life that are hindering your growth in this area?
That's
and
good.
While we may call them strongholds, we can say things like, there are things that are gripping your life like a vice, and it will not let you go. And so we don't have to use the Christian jargon, but we can help them to understand that they're under a grip of something that they haven't been free from. And we can also give a lot of education around forgiveness. Forgiveness is not just a Christian term. Lots of doctors and scientists have studied how approaching forgiveness and going through the forgiveness treatment can free people from a lot of things that that are gripping them.
Yeah, that's good.
I use the word choices a lot. Choices. I have a poem that I use, and everything lines about choices, and especially for men, you have to make a choice. And when you're choosing, you could choose to stay where you're at with porn. You choose the addiction, whatever's gripping you. It's a choice. It's a choice, and you have to make a choice as to, do I want to be free, or do I want to stay like this? And and again, it's not spiritual. It's content. And even though I know it's biblical, Deuteronomy 28, choose you this day who you want to serve, blessings and curses. Because within that, it's like, if you say, hey, look, when we talk about spiritual warfare, these things, I'm dealing with this, I'm dealing with that. Then it's up to you to stop it. And sometimes you have to face some things head on. And sometimes you have to be direct. I don't know if you, Dr. Angel or Dr. Danita, if y'all agree with me with that, but sometimes I have to be direct with certain people.
It depends, I believe.
Because they have to see it for themselves.
I believe it depends on the person's personality and everything. Dealing with something head on. I think about how some people will stop smoking cigarettes, for example, and they'll say, "Oh, I stopped cold turkey," or then somebody else will say, "Oh, I used the patch or something." "Oh, I used Nicorette." I don't know, but whatever you do, you got to do something, to make the change up the scenario.
But then there's some, Dr. Angel, that use the patch and but are still bound.
They're still bound. Right.
This is true.
This
is true.
I really believe that as as Christian counselors, we really should pray for the open door, for our clients. We're not going to cross any boundary lines, but one thing that we do know is that God wants them free.
Yes.
And I think those are the clients that we sacrifice for in prayer, praying in the gap, fasting for. I mean, this is not a call that, we just get to come in and, we talk to. This is a call when you're a Christian counselor. This is a call that takes you to places where you are denying your own flesh for the sake of helping someone else find freedom. And so I do believe God will give us when we are sincere about helping that person who doesn't know God find freedom, that he'll help us with the open door. He'll give us the words to say, where this person will come back and say, you know what? I came to this Christian place because I heard that whatever. And then that's the open door, right? And so you never know what God y'all all were looking frozen. Are you?
Yeah, you froze too.
You froze.
I was like, what? What's the last thing?
I don't know what the last thing was that I said. Before we all froze.
That's good. And that's
the open door.
Yeah.
The open door.
Right.
Yeah.
God open door.
I was saying that we are called to move beyond ourselves and sacrifice for the sake of the healing and the deliverance and the hope for our clients. And so I know that God would show us the open door. Somebody may show up and say, I came to this place because it was a Christian counseling center, and I'm not a Christian, and that's your open door. Or, there are times that people will say, well, I don't believe, well, what is, how do you get over this? Or how do you get through this? That's a fine line. But you got to know in your spirit whether that is the open door.
Right.
And whether God is prompting you to say, I'm not telling you necessarily that this is what you have to do, but this is how I find peace.
Yeah.
This is how I walk it, find freedom from the things that rack my mind, and the things that, when my mind is trying to be a runaway train wreck. These are the things that I do. And you ask. So that's self-disclosure.
Yeah.
But,
right.
Or you can say, well, you came to a Christian counseling center. I am a Christian. I can tell you, generally speaking, what Christians do.
Yeah. Because at that point they have asked that question. And for those of you who are watching, we as Christian counselors are still bound by a specific code of ethics where unless a client says specifically that they agree to having Christian counseling, there's certain things that we cannot bring up in session. We can't talk about Jesus in session. We can't bring up the Bible. We can't say God. Now we can utilize principles, but we cannot say that, well, this scripture right here says unless the client has specifically said that. So
and when the client specifically says it, you document it. When that door opens, document, quotes. This is what the client said.
This is what the client said. Yeah, because I was sharing with you, Dr. Danita, sometimes when a new client comes in that I'm assigned to, and I look at their intake, and our intake has a question whether or not they want to have Christian counseling. And sometimes they'll check no. But I still like to check in, because what I have found is that there's not always a clear understanding what Christian counseling is. So I'll follow up with them, and I'll say something like, I noticed on your intake, you indicated that you did not want Christian counseling. And then I'll wait to see what their response is, and I'll take it from there. Because they sometimes say, well, yeah, I don't want to just be sitting here talking about the Bible. And these are Christians who are saying that sometimes. And then I'll ask, well, can I share with you, from my perspective, what Christian counseling looks like when you are my client? And if they say yes, I'll share with them. And more often than not, at that point, they'll say, oh, yeah, well, in that case, I do want Christian counseling. And I have to document that in my notes, because their intake said they didn't want it.
Right.
So now I'm talking about God in session. I have to document that this is what transpired between the client and I. So I just want to clarify that for those who may not be familiar with it, the fine line that we have to walk sometimes. And sometimes the line is paper thin.
Right.
But we still got to walk. We
Very
got to walk
thin.
it. And we got to stay
Right.
on the
Right.
right side of that line.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's something that
So-
Dr. Danita told all of us at Mending Hearts is that pray yourself up before you go into that session. So you have a clear understanding, you know, that your ears is open, your eyes is open, you're able to see, you're able to hear.
Yes, absolutely. Because like you said earlier, Alvin, listen. I mean, if we really listen with the prayerful heart, there is so much we can hear. And it's not always hearing what is said, but hearing what is not said.
Not said. That's what we really need to hear. What's not said.
Right there.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And sometimes they're talking and they're talking and talking, and I'll hear something and I'll write it down. Okay, because I have to come back and address that, unpack that. And they're talking and they talk and they talk, and I'll write down something else. Because sometimes people don't realize how much they are really divulging when they go on those tangents. So sometimes we have to allow that to happen.
See, but you're building up that rapport. And so with that comfortability, they start to open up. Because you don't start knocking down the wall.
Yeah.
The walls start coming down. And that's the whole thing. It's like we have to be able to get through to them, to their heart. And you know, and once they start feeling comfortable, it's like, hey, they start saying things, you'd be like, and then when you tell them, they be like, they act all shocked. And be like,
right.
You know.
Well, it's 8:07. I've got 3 questions left. So I don't know if you guys want to just continue with those 3 or you want to try to have another episode. I'll let you guys decide because I'm here no matter what.
I think we could do the part 2, like you were saying earlier, next week.
Yeah. I have another meeting.
Okay. Oh, okay. So this is what we'll do for those who are listening. We're going to come back on next Sunday at 7 p.m. So it's going to be part 2 of The Sacred and the Secular, Reconciling Christianity with Modern Counseling Practices. Wow, this has really been good. And those of you who are listening, just put something in the chat and let me know from your perspective what it was like for you hearing all this. Were there things that you heard for the first time? Did you learn something new? Did you have an aha moment? Has it changed your mind at all about Christianity and counseling? So Dr. Danita, Dr. Angel, Brother Alvin, I want to thank you all for being here this evening. And we're going to be back again on next Sunday. So you guys will be hearing from me. So right now, I only have 3 questions left, but trust and believe they're going to be more by next Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay.
And thank you all for watching. And again, if you have not already done so, I would really appreciate if you would subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also find Marriage Beyond the Breach on Instagram. And guess what, y'all? My daughter finally convinced me to do a Marriage Beyond the Breach TikTok. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing over there yet, but I'm on it. So I still just got to learn how to actually do something on there because to me it is confusing. But you know, that's a baby boomer thing. So
yeah.
So I will see you all on next Sunday. Thanks again, and be blessed.
Bye-bye.
Right.
All righty.